Okay, so last video we went on a tour. Automotive, architecture, fashion, consumer products, healthcare marketing. And I know what happened after you watched it. Because it happens every time someone sees this map for the first time. You got genuinely excited about one of them. Maybe two. You thought, okay, this is interesting. This feels like something I could actually do. This is not games or VFX. It's something different, and the opportunity feels real. And then you open a new tab, and you stared at it, and you thought, okay, but how do I actually start? Because that's the gap, right? Between I can see the opportunity and I know what to do on Monday morning. There's this uncomfortable space where the excitement fades and the practical question just sits there unanswered. I've been in that space. I watched a lot of other artists sit in that space for way longer than they needed to. Not because the path wasn't there, because nobody drew it out clearly enough to follow. So that's what today is. No more theory. No more, this is why the opportunity is real. You already know that. Today is the step-by-step, the exact sequence. What you do first, what you do second, what the conversation looks like when you reach out, and how you handle the very specific challenge that trips up almost every artist who tries to enter a market they've never worked in before. And I'm going to tell you right now, there's one step in this sequence that most artists skip because it feels unnecessary. And it's the one that makes everything else either click or fail. I'll flag it clearly when we get there. Let's go. Here's what this video is. This is the execution video. The open this at your desk on Monday morning and do the thing video. I'm going to give you a 6-step sequence that works across any non-traditional market, whether that's automotive, consumer products, or any of the other industries we covered. Each step has a specific action, not a vague direction like research the industry. A specific, time-bounded, completable thing that moves you forward. I'm also going to be honest about how long each step takes, because one of the most demoralizing things is starting something with an unrealistic timeline in your head and then feeling like you're failing when reality takes longer. And at the end, I'm going to tell you the one thing that makes the difference between this being a sequence you try once and abandon and a sequence that actually compounds into real work and real income in new market. Ready? Step 1. Actually, before step 1, I want to set something up because there's a specific mental model that makes this whole sequence work. And if you don't have it going in, the steps feel disconnected and you'll probably skip the wrong ones. Here's the model. Think about the last time you hired someone for something outside your area of expertise. A plumber, a mechanic, an accountant. Think about how you chose who to hire. Did you evaluate their technical skills directly? Probably not, because you can't. You don't know enough about plumbing or engines or tax law to assess whether someone is technically excellent. What you actually assessed was whether they seemed to understand your specific situation, whether they asked the right questions, whether they talked about your problem in a way that made you feel like they'd encountered this before, whether the way they presented themselves made you feel safe handing the problem over. That's exactly what's happening when a non-traditional client evaluates a 3D artist they've never worked with before. They cannot evaluate your polygon counts or your render settings. They evaluate whether you understand their world well enough to be trusted with their visual output. So every step in this sequence is essentially an answer to one question. How do I demonstrate that I understand their world well enough to be trusted with it? Keep that question in mind as we go through the steps. And keep this in mind too. There's a point in the sequence where most artists make the same mistake, and it almost always happens at the same step. I'll tell you what it is when we get there. I know you've heard this before on this channel. I'm going to say it again because it's the step people most consistently ignore and most consistently regret ignoring. One industry. One. Not, I'll try automotive and consumer products at the same time. Not, I'll see which one gets a response first. One. Here's why this matters practically. Every subsequent step in this sequence requires you to develop genuine, specific knowledge of the industry you're targeting. Knowledge of how they talk about their problems. Knowledge of what their visual standards look like. Knowledge of who the decision makers are and where they spend time. Knowledge of what good work looks like in their context. That knowledge takes time to build. It is not transferable between industries in a meaningful way. Spending your attention on two industries means you build shallow knowledge in both rather than deep knowledge in one. And shallow knowledge, as we talked about in the last video, is not what opens the door. So how do you choose? 3 honest questions. Which industry genuinely interests you? Not just looks lucrative. Because sustained knowledge building requires genuine curiosity. And genuine curiosity is hard to fake over weeks of study. Do you have any existing connection to this industry? A previous job? An academic background? A personal interest that means you already have some of the contextual knowledge? That head start matters. Which industry has accessible entry points? Places where the clients gather that you can realistically reach. We'll come back to this in step 4. Spend 30 minutes answering these questions honestly. Write the answer down. You now have your target. Step 2, the research phase. 30 minutes a day for 3 weeks. Here's the specific action, not hours of deep diving. 30 minutes a day, 3 weeks. Focus, deliberate industry study. What you're reading, not 3D tutorials. Industry publications. LinkedIn groups where professionals in your target industry discuss their challenges. Case studies from agencies that serve this industry. Job listings from companies in this space. Not to apply yet, but to understand what they're looking for and how they describe it. If your target is automotive, read automotive news. Follow automotive marketing professionals on LinkedIn. Study the visual language of 5 major automotive brand campaigns. Not admiring them, reading them like a map. What visual conventions are consistent? What lighting approach? What type of environments? What does premium look like in this specific context? If your target is DTC consumer products, study the visual content of 5 successful DTC brands in your chosen product category. Read their marketing communications. Follow their founders and marketing leads on LinkedIn. Understand how they describe their visual challenges in their own words. By the end of 3 weeks, you'll have something specific and valuable, a vocabulary. The words these clients use, the problems they name, the standards they reference. That vocabulary is what you put into your outreach later. And it's what makes a potential client feel, within 30 seconds of reading your message, that you're not a stranger to their world. This is the step most artists skip, by the way. They think, I know enough to reach out, and they reach out without doing this. And they get silence, because the message sounds like a 3D artist pitching services, not like someone who understands the client's world. Don't skip this step. Step 3, build one piece of targeted work. Now you're ready to make something, not a portfolio overhaul, not 10 new pieces. 1. Here's the specific brief for that one piece. It should be for a realistic client in your target industry, not an invented fantasy brief, a real one based on what you now know about the industry from 3 weeks of study. What does a company in this space actually need? What type of visual? What standards does it need to meet? For automotive, model and render one vehicle hero shot. Find reference from a real automotive campaign. Match the lighting approach, the color grade, the composition conventions of the brand you're studying. Make it look like it belongs in their actual campaign. For consumer products, pick a real DTC brand in your category. Build a hero product image at the quality standard their current visual content suggests they're aiming for. Not necessarily what their current imagery looks like, what it's clearly trying to achieve. The key word in everything I just said is real. Real brand. Real visual standard. Real brief you invented based on real research. Why does this matter? Because when you show this to a potential client in that industry, they're not looking at a competent 3D render. They're looking at something that exists in their visual world. That demonstrates not just technical skill, but commercial understanding. That shows, without you needing to say it, that you've been paying attention to what matters in their specific context. One piece, realistic brief, real brand reference. This is your entry ticket. Step 4, find where your clients actually are. Okay, now I need to talk about something that most 3D artists get badly wrong. When they're ready to reach out, they go where they're comfortable. ArtStation, Instagram, Twitter. The place is full of other 3D artists. Your clients are not there. Or if they are, they're not there looking for vendors. Here's where they actually are. LinkedIn, specifically marketing directors, brand managers, product managers, and founders in your target industry. This is the single most productive platform for reaching non-traditional clients as a 3D artist. Not posting your renders, hoping someone scrolls past them. Actually connecting with and engaging with the specific type of person who makes the decision to hire visualization work. Industry events and communities. Automotive marketing conferences, DDC brand founder groups, pharmaceutical marketing associations. Most of these have LinkedIn groups or online communities. Some have in-person events. Your goal isn't to attend everything. It's to find the 1 or 2 spaces where your specific target client type actually congregates and engage there consistently. Trade publications and their communities. Many industry publications have comment sections, forums, or associated LinkedIn groups where their readers interact. These are gold for understanding what's on their minds and for being visibly helpful in a context they already trust. Spend 1 week identifying where your target clients actually spend time. Just observing, reading what they're talking about, getting familiar with their concerns. Not reaching out yet, just listening. That listening period, as uncomfortable as the inaction feels, is what ensures your first outreach says something worth hearing. Step 5, the first outreach. The message that works. Here's the specific structure of the outreach message that consistently generates responses, as opposed to the message most artists send that consistently generates silence. 3 sentences. That's it. Sentence 1, a specific observation about their world or their work. Not a generic compliment. Something specific that could only be written by someone who's been paying attention. I've been following your brand's visual content over the past few months and noticed how consistently your product imagery communicates premium quality without overstyling. Sentence 2, a specific connection between their world and your work. I've been developing CGI product imagery specifically for this aesthetic, the kind that feels editorial without losing the product clarity that drives purchase decisions. Sentence 3, a low-friction ask. Not, can I send you my portfolio? Not, I'd love to work together. Something easier. I'd be happy to share a piece I made recently that might be relevant to what you're working on. Would that be useful? That last sentence matters enormously. You're not asking them to evaluate you. You're asking if it's okay to show them something. The answer to that question is almost always yes. And that yes is the beginning of a real conversation. Write this message. Personalize it for each person genuinely, not just changing the name. Send it to 10 people over 2 weeks. Track the responses. Learn from the ones that don't respond. Not by sending follow-up pitches, but by asking what might have been missing in your observation or your connection. Step 6, turn the first conversation into the first project. You got a response. Someone said yes. Show me what you've got. What now? This is where the conversation matters as much as the portfolio. Because the portfolio shows what you can do. The conversation shows who you are to work with. When you share your work, don't just share the link. Briefly explain the brief you set yourself, why you made specific decisions, what you were trying to achieve visually and commercially. Not a lecture. 2 or 3 sentences that show you're thinking about the work the way they think about their work. Then ask 1 question about their current situation. What kind of visual content are you working on right now? Or, is there a specific type of imagery that's challenging to produce for your brand? 1 question, genuinely curious, not a sales pitch. If the conversation develops, and with the right message and the right piece, it often does, you'll reach the point where they share a need. And that's where you propose a small, low-risk first engagement. Not your full rate for a full project. A scoped, specific piece that lets both of you test the working relationship without either side overcommitting. That scoped first project, executed well, delivered professionally, with clear communication throughout, is the thing that turns a conversation into a relationship. And a relationship in a non-traditional market is worth more than any portfolio piece, because referrals within industries are how most ongoing work in these spaces actually moves. I told you at the start that there's 1 step people skip. You've probably noticed it by now. It's step 2, the 30 minutes a day for 3 weeks. The industry research, the vocabulary building. Here's what happens when people skip it. They build a portfolio piece, step 3, without the context that makes it resonate with a real client. So the piece looks like a competent 3D render rather than someone who clearly understands our visual standards. They write an outreach message, step 5, without genuine observations about the client's world. So the message sounds like a generic pitch. I'm a 3D artist looking for opportunities in your industry. Silence. They have the first conversation, step 6, and get asked questions about the client's specific context that they can't answer fluently. So the client feels like they'd be educating the artist rather than partnering with them. Every failure in this sequence traces back to skipping step 2. 30 minutes a day, 3 weeks. It genuinely doesn't feel like enough. It genuinely is enough to build the vocabulary that makes every other step work. Now, here's something I want to address that I know is sitting with some of you. The sequence I just gave you, 1 industry, 3 weeks of research, 1 portfolio piece, find where they are, the 3-sentence outreach. This works. I've seen it work. The artists who follow it and don't skip steps generate real responses and real conversations. But here's the honest complication. Following a sequence and staying in a sequence are different things. Because here's what happens around week 4 or 5. The research is done. The piece is built. The outreach is going out. And most of the responses are silence or polite non-responses. And the natural human thing to do, the thing our brains are wired toward when effort doesn't produce immediate results, is to conclude that the strategy isn't working and pivot to something else. And that pivot, that abandonment of the sequence before it's had time to compound, is what stops more artists from breaking into new markets than anything else. Not the strategy, the patience. There's a specific way to keep yourself in the sequence long enough for it to actually work, a way to measure progress that doesn't depend on getting a yes in week 4. A way to calibrate your expectations against the real timeline for this type of market entry, rather than the timeline you wish it had. That's what I want to cover specifically in the next video. Because the sequence without the patience framework is like directions to a destination without knowing how long the drive takes. You'll turn around before you get there. So, the 6-step entry strategy for any non-traditional 3D market. Step 1, pick 1 industry. Just 1. Write it down today. Step 2, 30 minutes a day for 3 weeks. Industry, publications, LinkedIn, case studies. Build the vocabulary. Don't skip this. Step 3, 1 targeted portfolio piece. Real brief, real brand reference, real visual standard. Step 4, find where your clients actually are. LinkedIn, industry communities, trade publications. 1 week of listening before reaching out. Step 5, 3 sentences. Specific observation. Specific connection. Low friction ask. Step 6, turn the first conversation into a scoped first project. Communicate well throughout. Deliver professionally. 1 good relationship is worth more than 10 cold contacts. The step everyone skips is step 2. Don't be everyone. Subscribe if this kind of step-by-step, actually do this career content is what you need. Hit the bell for the next video because the patience framework, how to stay in the sequence long enough for it to work, is the piece that makes all of this stick. Drop a comment. Which industry from the last video are you going to target first? Name it. Make it real. I read every single one. I'll see you in the next one.